good morning, good day, and good evening. I am, as always, your host, Brody Robertson. This is episode 138 of Tech of a Tea, and today's guest is Egee. Welcome to the show. I guess I probably should have introduced you. You know what? How about you just introduce yourself since I skipped over it anyway?
Hi, I'm Egee. You may know me, probably not, hopefully not, but I'm Egee.
What a great introduction that is. Do you want to maybe say, I don't know, some of the stuff you do? Anything? Just nothing?
I mean, I guess I do some Linux and tech stuff. I do some ASMR stuff. I do a lot of different things, I guess. It all depends on if you know me, where you know me from. A lot of
Mm-mm.
people that know me don't know that I do all this like different stuff that doesn't really like connect, but yeah, I have a lot of hobbies and interests, so.
Well, yeah, when I first heard about your channel, you were still like heavily involved in the typical Linux content. The hey, we're gonna look at this distro, we're gonna look at that distro. Hey, is this distro better
Mhm.
than that distro? And well, you stopped doing that as like your main thing now, and have really sort of branched out into all of this other sort of content. But I guess I guess where we can start is because you are still using Linux. Like
Sure.
one thing I like to ask a lot of people I bring on this show is how they actually got involved in Linux, because everyone sort of has their own sort of story about it. Like some people they found a CD somewhere and started using it. Some people just downloaded a Ubuntu or whatever. And you've been I don't know how long you've been using Linux, but you've been making content online for quite a while now. So I presume there's some story behind that.
Yeah. So my story with Linux, and it kind of it went from Linux to free and open source software,
Hmm.
which are similar but also
Yeah, there's a
different.
connection there.
There's more to Linux than, or there's more to free and open source software than just Linux, yeah, and vice
Hmm.
versa, I suppose. But my journey into Linux and FOSS land started with Windows licensing. I don't know what the year was. I don't remember how old I was. I was reinstalling Windows. I think it
Hmm.
was Windows 7 for the millionth time because I changed up my hardware,
Yep. Yep.
and I tried to install and it said, no way, your license has been used too many times. Call Microsoft. Yeah, so I did, and they said, yeah, man, your license is no good. That's it. So I rolled back to Windows XP and I was like, I'm done with this. Like a reoccurring thing with me is I don't like being told what to do.
Yep. Yep.
And I buy software and like especially at the time, so it was like the early mid 2000s, no,
Mm,
probably mid
mm.
late 2000s. Anyways, at the time it was less like now when you and I talk about software, we talk about licenses. When you purchase software, you're no longer purchasing the tangible product, you're purchasing a license
Yeah, yeah.
to
You're not
use it.
purchasing like a physical CD. You're purchasing this digital key that says you now have access to this, but that key can be revoked at any time. Depending on the terms of their contract they create with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So at the time, that wasn't like as prevalent or like well
Mm, mm.
known. So calling up Microsoft and them saying, yeah, that thing that you bought, it's no longer good because you personally have used the license too many times. And from their perspective, the technology to determine who's using it, how it was used, all that jazz just wasn't there. So their brilliant answer to that is say, oh, 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, and then that key is just no good.
Yeah, yeah.
Without making that clear to the customer, very, very strange business decision on their part. But whatever executive at Microsoft said, this is how we're going to lock people into our product and get them to buy more keys, you just pushed me to the world of Linux, and now here we are many years later, and I'm on the show with you. So that little event has led to this. It's kind of interesting to think about.
What distro did you first find yourself on? Did you end up jumping around between different things, or were you sort of just comfortable where you first wound up?
So I started looking into Windows alternatives,
Mm.
and the first things that I found were FreeBSD and Linux, of course. And the Linux community turned me off big time because they were like totally anti everything,
Mhm.
like anti establishment. And I wasn't as into that then as I
Mhm.
am now. Now I'm all about it. I'm like, hell yeah, you know, like screw the big business and big companies. But at the time, I was like, I just want to play my games.
Yeah, yeah,
Never
totally fair.
mind, never mind going into it. Like, am I going to play my games on FreeBSD, especially at the time? No,
Mm.
but I didn't know that. I was totally naive, and I was just getting into it. So the first distro that I ran was probably PCBSD way back in the
Mhm.
day. It's not even around anymore. It was cool, but yeah, it did not do what I needed it to. So a lot of back and forth on Windows XP and trying out different distros and stuff. And the first Linux distro that I ever used was probably Fedora, and I think that it was called Fedora Core at the time.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
For anyone who may not recognize PCBSD, it also got rebranded to TrueOS at some point. So that continued being released until the latest release I'm seeing is 2018. So I don't know if the project's dead. No, okay. Development ended in 2020. So 2018 was the last stable release, and then I guess the project sort of just fell apart from there, and no one continued it.
I think that what happened was there's just no money in the space,
Sure,
and
yeah.
the company that was doing it, you know, they want to make money and they can't run on investor funds forever. So it was like, well, let's pivot to more enterprise BSD, and that's where TrueOS came from. I think I'm like basically speculating, but PC BSD wasn't terribly popular. I
Mhm.
thought it was really well branded. It looked rad. Like you went to the website, had good name, it had good
Mhm.
branding and everything, but the consumer market just wasn't there.
Well, yeah,
So.
especially when did you say what year did you say it was? Sorry, was it?
Oh, I don't know, late 2000s or something?
Oh, okay, yeah, definitely. Software definitely was not there at that point. Like,
No way. No. Like
especially
installing it was hard.
mm. What was the install process actually like? I've gone back and installed things like early versions of Ubuntu, but Ubuntu's always had like a nice. It wasn't always a graphical installation process. Originally, it was more of like the Debian like installer where you have the CLI interface, but it's always had a nice-ish way to install it. What
Hmm.
was the installation process for PCBSD back then?
Dude, I don't remember. I don't.
Nothing at all.
I have like no memory of it at all. I know that I know that Fedora's installer
Mm,
was, I think it was basically what it is today, where it's just like you want to install it, pick a drive,
mm.
go. But yeah, PCBSD's installer, I don't remember it very well, like at all.
So, what made you want to go from the BSD side over to the Linux side then? Like, was it just software support? Was it developer support? What exactly brought you over to that side?
So I went with PCBSD simply looking at the communities and seeing that the Linux community was like super toxic and
Yep,
the
yep.
BSD community was like, hey, let's all just like, you know, proprietary software, all that stuff. I didn't understand
Mm,
the core differences between free and open source and proprietary software. Like I was like, software is
mm,
software. And I mean, like it is,
mm,
and
mm.
you can choose to have a deeper like relationship with it from that aspect. Like I only want free and open source software, but at the time I didn't really care. So the free BSD crowd, I was like, I like these people because they're like me and they don't care.
Mm.
They just want software that works and they want it to be secure and fast. So that's why I went with PCBSD. But I bailed on the BSD crowd because the compatibility and support, just
Yep.
like forget it. Like I think even getting NVIDIA drivers, like you could do it. I think NVIDIA supported BSD for a long time, but it was hard to get the drivers installed. And then there's no Steam support. Like you had to use Wine
Mm.
to install Steam, and it was just this whole thing. And the workflow was just better on Linux, so that's what I gravitated to. I just wanted something that worked, is really what it comes down to,
I can't
and I
speak
still
for
do.
how well they function, but there are still like modern drivers for the FreeBSD side from
Hmm.
Nvidia. I, yeah, as I said, I don't know if they're any good or how. Like the Nvidia drivers on the Linux side are already sort of like you know questionable depending on what you're trying to be doing. Um, so as you came over to the Linux side because of the software support, when did I guess that Linux sort of I get how the Linux ideology that care about free software, that care about you know the freedoms you have, the whether something is proprietary, your data importance, whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it. When did that sort of come into it, or how did that come into it? I guess.
I don't have like a good single story for that. Like you think I would, but I don't. I think that my love and appreciation for free and open source software built over time. And I'm the kind of person where I have really strong core beliefs and values, and those come from others questioning my beliefs, my belief system. So I worked at this particular company for quite a while, and we were all Windows all the time. And it was like a total Windows.NET shop. And I was coming in and I ran Linux at home. I knew all this stuff. But I also knew Windows just fine. Well, not like I was in QA, so I didn't need to know Windows super well. I just needed to like test stuff. So I just kind of walked around with my Linux knowledge, like flexing it when I could, because like all of these developers seemed so ignorant to me that like the idea of opening a terminal, like opening a command line or whatever the hell Windows called it at the time, that like scared them. Like that was so Cro-Magnon to do that. And I'm over here like like doing all this crazy magic, and they're like, "What is happening?" And it's funny because some of the QA test tools had to be run through like the terminal, like Selenium WebDriver and stuff. You just had to run it through. Later, it was like PowerShell, but these were like app developers that could not write code without Visual Studio. And my previous gig, like that's everybody was in. They're like SQL developers. So like if you wrote code, you had this big, huge IDE, and it wasn't just a place to write code. It was a place to write it, build it, ship it, distribute it. And you were locked into that Microsoft Visual Studio lifecycle. And it's like these people didn't realize how bad that was. And like I started to see it, like seeing these really intelligent developers just totally stuck because they didn't have the tools. Like they were incredibly smart developers, but they couldn't do anything without their tools. Like that just, I don't know, that was probably my first like, this is weird. Why would you want a company telling you how you can use your like intelligence? I don't know. That seems weird to me. So to rewind back to that company where I was doing QA, I was on a project where we needed to do some mobile testing. We were writing an app for mobile devices, and we needed to do a little testing. So I looked at the solutions in C# and like .NET land, and they all sucked. It's not that they sucked, like they did suck, but it was really early. And Microsoft and I think it was Xamarin, or the company that handled Mono, they hadn't been acquired by Microsoft. It was like right before they were acquired. But their tooling wasn't there. So I found another tool based on Ruby called Calabash Android. And I think that was later acquired by the Xamarin people, but it used like Cucumber and behavior driven testing or something. It was this crazy framework. It was really cool at the time, but now I'm totally not into it. It'd be rad. But this is a long story to say that the test harness and framework that I built had a CLI entry point. So there wasn't a GUI that you couldn't use. I mean, you could use Visual Studio, but it was like, all right, you just open a terminal and run Ruby and then the script. And I had to demo this and show my team of like 4 people how to do it. And there was this one guy that was just like, no, I will not do that. I'm like, why though? But like, well, I don't understand. Like, open a terminal, type in Ruby and pass a file in. He's like, we need an IDE. Like this does not compute for these developers.
Wait, so I presume that these developers, when they're interacting with Git or whatever, probably Git, whatever
visual safe.
Like what I was gonna say is, are they using some sort of like GUI to interact with it? Because most people would at least like, even if they do nothing else in the terminal, at least most developers at least know how to use Git in the terminal.
To be totally fair, the way that Visual Studio integrates with source control is awesome. So I get that. I totally understand that. So, but they just never touched
I get
a
yeah.
command line ever.
It's been a while since I used Visual Studio. I completely forgot about like how for all the things that I don't like that Microsoft does, Visual Studio is a really I don't know if I want to say well built because a lot of things I don't like about Visual Studio, but it is an environment where you can. It's sort of like the Apple ecosystem where you can be in a situation where you never leave it. Like you can do
Yeah.
everything you need to do without interacting with anything else. And I guess I just completely forgot about the Git stuff because when I was using Visual Studio, I did the Git stuff from the terminal just because I found that like easier to do.
Sure.
But no, that
If
makes
it's your
sense.
workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was like another thing. Like you guys are literally vendor locked. Like you've been brainwashed to love your vendor and be like, I can't live without Microsoft and Visual Studio. And I'm like, Jesus, I don't know what to say. So fast forward even further at that gig, and like I was able to flex more of my Linux chops. I mean, it came in handy, like especially moving forward, like you can't avoid Linux. Like if you don't know some Linux stuff, at least you're able to like speak to it, or you don't want to like super deep dive into it, but like say you're in a meeting and Linux comes up, like have enough to be able, like know enough about it to be able to talk about its benefits, But I was always that dude in the room. So my manager at the time, he wasn't a big fan of the GPL and the aggressive free and open source licensing. And so him and I like kind of went back and forth about it in a very friendly sort of way. Like I said, I like it when people challenge my beliefs, and
Yep.
that helps me kind of like become who I am, I guess. And that did, I was like, well, I thought that I was all about the GPL and the way that it like worms its way into software, but like I understand the arguments against it. And I think GNU Readline is a library that was actually written with the intent for other libraries to use it. And if they use it, they have to become GPL. So that's like the viral licensing that he really hated.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like I totally get the perspective of the like hardcore everything has to be free software situation. Like anyone who has that sort of mentality of software. And if you're talking about software that is never going to be used in a commercial context, like I get it. Like if you're like writing a random terminal, a random tool that you need to be using yourself, you don't really care if anyone uses it like outside of you. I get like just throwing that out to the world as a bit of GPL software, but I think when it comes to GPL, there's a lot of people who are like very anti other licenses. Like there's every so often I'll get someone in my comment section who will go on this big rant about the MIT license, how they refuse to use anything that's using MIT because if they use this project using MIT, then someone can go and fork the project and they can make it proprietary, which is all like valid things. Sure. But it doesn't, like, the fact that it's MIT doesn't affect their usage of that application. All that affects is the existence of these forks. And if, like, something goes down that direction, a lot of the developer support goes down that fork, like, sure, that's a concern at that point, but the fact that it's using MIT by itself doesn't negate the benefit of the software as is. Like, one recent example of this is I was talking about the Pop! OS's new environment they're building, which is based on Smithy, which is licensed in MIT. And this is where that discussion came from, where they're worried that, someone's going to go and fork Smithy and it's going to take it proprietary and all of that. But it doesn't affect at all the main Smithy project. Like, I hope what I'm saying here makes any level of sense. I just think there is a place to be concerned about the licenses when there is a potential for there to be a corporate interest in the project. But I think some people take it maybe a little bit too seriously when it's just some like throwaway project sometimes. I've sort of jumped around a bit too much there. I just realized that as I was saying some stuff there, but
it's all good.
Yeah, that tends to happen.
No, it's good. If I may interject, I'm thinking when
Go
you're
ahead.
talking about when you're talking about MIT and people being concerned about other parties and other interests doing other things with it, basically,
Mm.
it reminded me of MongoDB and the Elasticsearch Elk stuff. So take MongoDB is probably a really good example. What's going on with the Elk stack and Elasticsearch is maybe a little more nuanced. But with MongoDB, it's an open source, or was an open source. I mean, it
Yep.
still is, but people are like, the licensing is weird. But it's a really, really powerful open source project and database. Like, it's super rad. And it's a company that is building it. You know, they're paying developers lots of money to make this. And at that company where I was talking about QA, we actually had a MongoDB consultant come in and train us up on it, and I mean, it was fine. But somebody paid, like, I guess we paid for that dude to come out, but still, like, he was an employee of Mongo and presumably. But anyways, what I'm saying is that these companies are putting money into these projects that are permissively licensed, and people can just take them and do whatever they want. So eventually the suits and executives are like, hey, we need to figure out how to lock this down, because they from way up above, they look down and they see all these little independent people forking their software and making it their own. And they're like, whoa, that, however they rationalize or justify it, like, that's money going out the door, whatever. So they changed the licensing to make it less permissive. And people are like, it's no longer open source. It's just not. And it was like this big deal. But I think it's an interesting question when companies start with an open source offering and then they want to figure out how to make it profitable without screwing with licensing. I think an example, perhaps a successful example that I honestly don't know a ton about, is GitLab. And GitLab is a tool that I use and I manage every single day, and it's really, really good. Like, for an open source project, it is. I mean, any project, even if it's closed source, it could be crap, but GitLab is open source, and I use the open source version. They have an enterprise offering too, but I use the open source version. I manage it, and it's really, really good. Developers are super professional. They have an awesome release cycle, tons of communication, and it's like, this is an open source project, fully open source, and it's awesome. I can't speak to the financials of the project. I mean, maybe they're like way in the red. They just don't want to talk about it. That would be a shame. But like, there are success stories where something is fully open source, able to be used and forked by the community, and it's still good.
I think one place. How's GitLab licensed? Is that MIT, BSD, GPL? What are we looking at here?
It's one of those. I believe it's one of those three. Yeah, that's one maybe you should look up.
GitLab licensed.
Watch, it's like not open source at all. No, it's open source, but they have enterprise offerings that behind a paywall sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't want to see their premium version. Show me the GitLab,
Premium.
GitLab repo. GitLab. If I just look up GitLab, let's see if that shows up. It does.
Yeah,
perfect.
sure.
Oh, is that
What's
the GitLab
that
website? No, I think this is. Wait, I think this is the repo. Where is their license? I don't use GitLab a lot. I don't know what the license is. License. Here we go. Let's see. What does it say? Provide. MIT.
There it is. Boom. MIT.
So MIT expat. I'm not sure what the distinction with that license is, but it is a variation of the MIT license. I think the distinction can be made here with software that's intended to be used by many people as opposed to used by one party. When it's something like GitLab, I can understand the concern with it being a very permissible license like this, because there could come a situation where, say, Microsoft may be a bad example because they already have GitHub, but let's say Amazon, for example, said they wanted to do source control, and then they forked GitLab, and then their version of GitLab became the main version. Then you could expect a lot of that developer support to move over to that version, and that could eventually go proprietary at some point. I think the situation is very different with something like Smithy, where that project was sort of like, it existed as a Wayland backend, but nobody's really using it. Where, like, System 76 came along and then actually gave it a purpose. it being a permissible license in this case doesn't really change the fact that like nobody was using it beforehand, and they've sort of like given it some sort of life. Like they could take proprietary at some point. That's entirely possible, but I don't think it's moving that work from one location to another, which is the concern I see a lot of people having when it is something permissible.
I think that's a good point, and I think that that's more of an issue with smaller projects. Going back to the GitLab thing, and it may or may not relate to the Smithy thing, but let's say, for example, Amazon wanted to get into source control, right? Like that'd be weird, but they actually, to be honest, Amazon actually has, AWS has source control. They have their own setup, so they've already done it. But for this,
sure, yeah.
Yeah, for this example, let's say that Amazon, that we all know and love, they want to get into source control, and they forked GitLab and made Amazon Lab or some, what we'll call it, whatever. So you could argue that that's a bad thing because now you've split the audience, you've split the engineering effort and everything. But you could look at it from another perspective, in that Amazon, again, we're using Amazon as a company, like, and as an example, it's huge. So from that perspective, Amazon just released their new offering, but now everybody that is interested and tuned into Amazon is aware of their offering, and that offering is a fork of another project. So eventually people will be funneled, and then is more choice a bad thing? Like you have GitLab, and let's say somebody gets burned by GitLab, and they can go to an alternate version, a fork of GitLab that Amazon is offering. So it's just extra choice, right?
I think that is a fair point, but it also becomes a concern with when it becomes so distant from that original project. Like, one good example of this is Mastodon. So Mastodon, you've got your Mastodon account. There's Gab and Truth Social, which both are forks of Mastodon, which Gab does it a little bit, but Truth Social made no mention of the fact, like, this was a big controversy when, like, the beta happened, that was a fork of Mastodon. That being a fork, it being so separate from it that they don't really... There's no way to there's no way to divert those people from one project to the other when it makes no indication of it being a fork of that original project.
Yeah, I would say that there's no synergy between the projects, right? Like there's feedback and they're playing off one another. But if they're so detached and distant, like if Amazon did do this weird thing and fork GitLab, and there's no mention, it's completely different, then yeah, I guess people wouldn't really know about one another. But maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part.
Maybe, but like, no, I think licensing is a very important discussion that it's weird. I will make videos on licensing that I feel like are pretty interesting videos, and judging by, people having their discussions in the comment sections, like in videos that aren't related to that one, it seems like licensing is this topic that a lot of people in the FOSS space are really interested in. And maybe that was the case like a couple of years ago, but I think we're actually sort of getting into this space where Linux is kind of branching out of just the FOSS people, especially now that we have, the Steam Deck is obviously... Yeah. Are you still there? Discord just froze for a moment. Like, you've got the Steam Deck now, where now you've got a lot more of the Linux gamers, and you had Proton for a thing, like, quite a while now. So, using Linux isn't just a thing that only the FOSS people are doing now, and I guess the proportion of people that are using Linux that actually care about the license and about how things are licensed, I don't think the raw number is going down, but the overall, it looks like a lot less because of that growth that Linux has been having.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really cool observation. I see on Reddit all these people, like presumably kids that are getting into the Steam Deck, they're getting into Linux, and they're like, whoa, you just pass in these parameters and all the performance changes and stuff. Like, you know what's funny is back in XP and
Mm,
Vista and 7, you could do that too. Like that's how Windows, like you pass in all these crazy parameters and get games and stuff to behave different. And
mm.
now with Windows 10 and 11, it's just like this is how it runs, and there's really not much you can do to fine tune it or whatever. And then you go over to Linux, and there is definitely a type of techie tinkery person that likes that. Like for a long time, I personally like denied the fact that I like it when my system breaks. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, but you know what I'm talking about,
No,
right? Like
I know exactly what you mean.
something screws up, and I'm like, all right, I'm rolling up my sleeves, and we're gonna get to the bottom of it. And what's cool about it is a lot of times after fighting with that challenge, I'm like, I'm smarter and I'm better equipped to deal with issues like that. Like for me personally, I like that.
Mm.
And I can see how not everybody is like that, but I like it.
No, I use Arch, so like, yeah,
So that's your jam.
exactly. Well, I've sort of I've sort of turned my system breaking into a job, so like there is that as
Uh,
well. But even
yeah.
just when I was like first starting to use Linux, I did enjoy it when something, as long as I didn't have like an assignment due or something at the time. But when I wasn't super busy with other things, if something went wrong, like that's an opportunity to learn something new about your system. Like, hey, I didn't understand the way that GPG keys worked, for example, and my keys had expired in my package manager. So now I have to
Sure.
go update that list, and because I'm going to update it, I might as well like look into why that's a thing that needs to be updated. Why this is a thing that we have connected to our packages, or
Sure.
a recent issue with Grub where there was like this
Oh.
broken version of Grub Shift, and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
You got burned by that too?
I
Man.
skipped the affected version, so I didn't have any like bootloader issues with it, but
Oh,
yeah, it like that's an opportunity to like look into why this is the case. Maybe not look into it as much as I might do for a video where I'm going to read some mailing lists for 3 hours, but it's still an opportunity to look into sort of why this happened and why the bootloader functions in this fashion. Maybe even
sure.
look at what other bootloaders might be available. Like, hey, is this a chance to try out system deboot or refined, or maybe
Sure.
even go like just straight UEFI boot and just skip the bootloader altogether.
Yeah, totally. I've graduated from QA and software. I mean, I guess it is software engineering. I'm like a systems engineer, basically. Like some people would call it DevOps. I don't like the term DevOps very much. I'm just a operations dude. But when something breaks and screws up like that, my thought is like, okay, this will never happen again. I am going to find a way to script this so this never breaks or screws up again. So that's I wouldn't have that drive had I not used Linux and had my system break. And it's don't get me wrong, like it's painful. Like I remember one time I wanted to show a friend something. I was running OpenSUSE a long time ago, and I did an update, and the display drivers were gone, like nothing worked. And like that's really frustrating, and it was embarrassing. But like, damn it, it was character building, and I'm a better person because that happened. That's what I tell myself anyway.
Well, you gotta convince yourself somehow the Linux problems are like good for you.
Yeah.
We can't just sit
Take your
around
medicine.
just complaining everything's bad all the time. We gotta like convince other people outside of Linux that it's not all bad. The grass is actually greener on the other side. Come over here, come experiment with
Yeah.
it, see what it's like.
No, for real. And I think that's actually that could segue to another topic, and that is for a while there was, I don't see it nearly as much today, but for a while there was this big push to get people like, we got to get everybody on Linux, get your mom on Linux, get your dad on, get grandma on
Yeah.
Linux. Like, dude, hold on here. And this is like, it's 2022 now. I still wouldn't do that. Like there are distros, I'd say Endless OS, very immutable distros that are solid, that won't break and screw up. But by and large, I would not recommend Linux to just like everybody. Like that like GPLE. Like I talked a little bit about GNU Readline, and I get it. You know, like in the 80s and 90s when GNU and free software was like kind of like it was picking up and people were learning about it. The idea that like we could force free software on people and have it, it's a very militant way of looking at it. And I mean, it's a way, but I don't think it's scaled, and it turned a lot of people off because like people have agency. They don't want to be forced into doing something, especially when their like career is on the line. Like let's say you're a developer and you're like, oh, GNU Readline, it'll do exactly what I need to do, include it, and now suddenly it's like, oh, we just screwed our entire code base up. Like why? I don't know why anybody thought that that was going to be like a good way of getting people not interested in free and open source software into it. Like, oh, I guess I have to. What? No, that doesn't work that way. But,
well, yeah. What happens then is you end up getting things like, you know, you have the GNU core utils, and now you have BusyBox. Like,
sure.
You know, just because you have this thing right now, if it's not going to fit the use case that someone has, you know, someone's going to build something that, you know, is gonna work for that. Like more modern example of that is the work that is being done with Asahi Linux, where people are taking the M1 Macs and like straight up reverse engineering drivers for them. Like Lena is doing incredible work on this, everybody else is doing incredible work on this, and it's taking these devices that Apple, you know, wants nothing to do with getting Linux working. Like they're not actively going out of their way to stop it, but they're not going to help you. And sort of the same thing is true here with what GNU's done, where they want you to be using this in a certain way, but, you know, for the corporate use cases, that's not going to be happening. And as much as it's fun to hate on the corporations, and in a lot of cases, you know, many of them deserve it, they're going to exist, and they're going to find ways around the limitations that you build in to the software that you know, are trying to propagate.
Yeah. I think that the GPL and that flavor of very aggressive open source software licensing has its place, and I'm really happy that it exists. I think that its origins were a little misguided. Like I said, very militant, very like you will go open source. Like what? It was a way to do it. I think that we've moved past that. But I think the GPL, like I use it in some of my software, I look at the GPL license as a way to make a statement or create something for the public benefit. One project that I'm well aware, I don't use it, but I used to, and I'm familiar with it, and it's GPL.
Sorry, Discord cut out when you said whatever you just said.
Oh, Linux Game Server Manager?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's GPL, I think. I'm pretty sure it's GPL. But the idea is that if you make a really awesome project that's really influential, and it could be used, it could be monetized, but you don't want it to be, like it's a personal statement. And I'm not trying to attribute that to any project. I mentioned Linux Game Server Manager, but I'm not trying to attribute these thoughts to it.
It's MIT, by the way.
Is it MIT?
Yeah, it's a bad example.
That's fine. Yeah. But when I think of the GPL in my software, not that I have like big projects or anything, but is this something that somebody could take and commercialize? And if so, then I want to consider like, am I okay with that? And like I am, but if it's a very personal project that I put a lot of work into, maybe I'm not, and I want to put the GPL on there to stop. I mean, you could look at it almost like a way to copyright, like prevent big, mean, aggressive companies from stealing your code and putting it in their code base without giving you any credit, because MIT doesn't require that, right? I mean, it says like you have to move the license all around, but if you're using MIT code that you've then closed and put in your code base or just like copy and pasted, nobody's going to know you did it.
Yeah.
So from that regard, if you're working on a personal project or something that's very influential, using the GPL, Linux kernel is a great example, right? I mean, I should use that one because the Linux kernel is GPL, BSD is BSD. And because the Linux kernel is GPL, everything has to stay in the open. And sometimes Linux is used as an example of like, look, it can work. But the thing about the Linux kernel is it has huge critical mass. It's gigantic, right? And it's
Mhm.
also like incredibly valuable. Like the value of the kernel, everybody can use it, does it, all this stuff. If you just made a little project that's GPL, I mean, are people going to use it? Do people know about it? You know, you have to consider your licensing based on what you're doing, who your audience is. And I guess that goes back to the original discussion around licensing. Like it's a thing,
Mhm.
but it's something that developers and people have to consider.
Well, the important thing about Linux as well is you're not usually integrating Linux into another piece of software. You're running software on top of Linux. So it being GPL v2 doesn't really get in the way of most corporate use cases. Now there are certain cases where it might, where you are trying to run very specific software, but also it being v2, like the TiVo situation happened. That's one of the things that
Hmm.
caused the creation of GPL v3, where it has more limitations in the way the software can be used to stop that being done. But Linus has always sort of been. You can go back and listen to conversations had back in like 2008. I want to say it's 2008, where he basically wants the software to be propagated, but doesn't like the idea of MIT necessarily, because he wants the changes to be brought back to the project, even if the
Absolutely.
context they're going to be used in, like in TiVo, for example, like TiVo's running on this very specific hardware. The patches that TiVo had made weren't going to be useful to the core Linux project,
Mhm.
but by having them shared back, someone else can make use of those patches and maybe run a version of the kernel on that TiVo devices, which is what people have done over the years, until the modern devices where they're a bit more locked down. Um, but I think there's a lot of area for nuance here, where it's GPL doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be bad for corporate use, and MIT is always going to be good for corporate use. Depending on what that software is doing and where it's sitting in the software stack, it is going to have slightly different implications.
Yeah, totally.
I was going to say something. What was I going to say? Um, some
Was it about licensing?
might have been. I don't remember.
I had one of those moments a little bit ago.
It tend look. No
Just
matter
gone.
no matter when I record this, it can be like middle of the day, it can be 3 in the morning. This is gonna happen at some point in the show where I'm just gonna completely lose my train of thought and derail the entire conversation. But when you speak for 40 minutes,
Yeah.
something has to go wrong at some point.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I get it.
So why don't we just I guess segue into your content creation? We didn't get into that earlier.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about Egee content creation and stuff.
That's always a good response
Well,
whenever I mention that.
I mean, hey, like I'm still like I've been on YouTube for since before 2014. I
Mm,
was gonna say 2008. I don't know why that year jumped out at me. Have I been that? No, the channel was made in 2014. I was doing some stuff on YouTube before then,
mm.
but that's all gone. But yeah, to me, I'm just a dude. Like I don't know. I
Just
just
sort of do stuff.
yeah. I do what brings me joy.
Mm. Well, how about we start with like, why did you want to make, like, what got you interested in making content anyway? Like, a lot of people, they might just make 1 or 2 videos and then
Mhm.
throw it away, but you've sort of been doing it at a remotely consistent pace for many a years now.
Yeah. I don't know. No, like I mean, I could just like bookend it like that. But I mean, the short answer is I don't know. I just do it, man. But the longer answer is like if I really think about it, my dad, when I was like younger and even now, he makes videos all the time. He just like gets out his camera
Hmm.
and he sends like a mad scientist and he's doing all this crazy stuff and he sends me videos of it. And I'm like, hey, you know, there's YouTube, and he's like, yeah, and then that's the extent of it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't know, but I guess I have that bug to want to create content. I'm like, I like to create stuff, and I mean, for my love of free and open source software, like what's the greatest joy about writing software? And to me, this is going to sound so like hippie-ish, but I'm here for it. I love to share it, man. I want to write something cool and I want to share it around. Because like here's the thing, I would not be a developer, I would not be me today if I hadn't had open source code and open source developers to work with. Like, you know? So the idea that I can give that back and I can open my code and make coding videos and get people excited about it, like why would I not do that, you know? Problem is that I'm not very good at it, so I don't do it very often.
What, the coding or the videos?
None of it, really. Like I look at it pains me when my older videos pop up in the feeds of my other channels. I'm like, dude, get that out. I don't watch my older videos. I watch my newer stuff, but my older stuff where I was just recording and throwing it up there, no. I wish that those would go away. And sometimes like in the past especially, I've made videos private and stuff, but I've realized that I'm not the only, like, I'm not in a silo. Like there are other people out there, much to my like dismay. There are people that watch and enjoy my content. I'm so upset that people enjoy my content. No, I have a weird relationship with my channel and my content, and like I'm becoming more comfortable with it. I'm really trying to be more comfortable with the idea that people know of Egee and people watch my stuff and people enjoy it. So that I've just not watched my older stuff because if I do, I have this tendency to want to be like private and I'll never watch that again. So yeah.
On my current, I've had many I've had channels where I've made videos like back in like 2000 and I don't know, when did YouTube come out? Like just after that. I've told the story of how I discovered YouTube many times, but the general gist of it is when I moved back from Queensland to South Australia, which is the state I'm living in now, my cousin, who at the time, I think he still is a software engineer, and he told me about this website that firstly, I didn't really know what a website was because I didn't have an internet connection before that. I lived in the middle of nowhere, Queensland. Went to a really rural school, like 60 students, very tiny place. So when I came back to South Australia, got my first internet connection, like first home internet connection. And he told me about this website that had a bunch of videos on it. And it sort of like had just come out in like the past 6 or so months. And that website was YouTube.
Sure.
And I then made videos, you know, probably a year or so after that, and, you know, throwaway channels here and there. At some point, I'll mention some of them at some point, because there are videos still up on those channels.
But
They're
not associated with you, though?
You know, we'll just ignore those.
I mean, hey, man, I got them too. I got channels with just, like, crap out there. I'm like,
When I was so young though that you'd be really hard pressed to tie it to me without actually knowing that it's me. But where I was going with that is every time, like, this happens sort of in a rolling way. I always feel like the last 6 months of my content is, you know, remotely good, and anything before that is garbage. Don't watch it. And
I feel you, man.
And I get comments on like videos back from like 2020. I'm like 2019. I think it was videos 20, whatever. From like those earlier videos, and I'm like, why are you watching this? And some of them will be like, hey, this is a great video. I'm like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? That's not true at all. Like, I'll go back and look at it, and I think the problem when you go back to one of your older videos, you sort of remember the mental state you were in when you made that. So there was a period when I was like really depressed when I made these videos. Like,
Sure.
no, these are bad. Like, do
Yeah.
you hear the way I'm speaking? I sound like I don't want to be here. Everything I'm saying is like terribly researched and it's all nonsense. And I'm going on these long-winded tangents. I'll go on long-winded tangents here, but like I don't plan anything here. I go on these long-winded tangents where I say nothing at all. How are you enjoying what I'm saying here? How are you getting anything of value out of this?
I don't know. People just want to watch stuff. Yeah, I hear you, man. I totally do.
I think anyone who does like their old content, like you can appreciate the path that you've come through, but I think anyone who like genuinely thinks their old content is good, they've sort of stopped growing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a really good point. Yeah.
Like I don't think it's just with that. Like you play guitar. I'm sure if you go listen,
Yeah.
how long have you been playing guitar now?
Since 20 years, something.
If
Long time.
if you have any early recordings and you were to go listen to some of them, I'm sure.
Honestly, I'd love them. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a time long ago when I was really into like recording and producing. I have a very weird relationship with music, and I'm really trying to get back into it, like get into my emotional connection with my musical instruments and stuff. Like, there's a lot to it. And on my other channel, that's actually why I've been recording not just my tunes, because I've got it on SoundCloud and stuff too. Yeah. But I want to see what it looks like to play that song, and like not just me and my movement and performance, but also like the chord shapes and stuff. Yeah. But there was a time when I was recording stuff, and I had it all on Google Music. Back in the day, like actual Google Music. People probably don't even remember it, but I didn't publish, by the way. I just uploaded it there. It was a thing. I don't even know how to describe it. But when I deleted an old Google account, it took all that with it. So I lost all of my old recordings. And I remember one song that I wrote on there that like there was like a little solo that I played, and I don't remember how I played it. So I'm channeling that, and I'm like, okay, it's not enough that I record the audio. I want to see myself do it. That way I can look at my hands. I really love watching live performance. I love going to concerts and stuff, but I love watching concerts on YouTube and stuff. And I'm just like it just like entranced by the guitarists, and everybody's doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm so into it. So that's why I was like, well, wait, if I do this and I forget how to play something, which I do all the time, I can just go back to the video and be like, oh yeah, that's how to do it. So,
well, as I was mentioning, I think I've mentioned a couple of times in this podcast, I started learning guitar. Nice. Doing that for about 7 days now, so looks you've got a bit more time to catch up to your experience. But now, like there is so much. Like right now, I'm going through a series by a guy called Marty Schwartz. He's got this incredible series on YouTube going over like. He's got these videos going over like 1 or 2 chords every video. He'll be like, hey, here, I think he started with E minor and then was like, hey, here's A and here's G, and now like I think the last one I did was like C and then D. Yeah. This is an incredibly good series that go over like these basic chord shapes in a really fun way, because as he's going through them, he'll like demonstrate songs that you can play with them as well. Like he'll be like, hey, you can play Sweet Home Alabama with this set of chords, you can play Knocking on Heaven's Door with this set of chords, and it's honestly, I'm having a lot of fun with it. As I said, only doing it for 7 days. Maybe I'll get bored of it after a couple of months, but this is a great way to learn. Like, this is a great way to get myself interested in it. What was your experience? I'm sure the resources were much less when you started. What was your initial experience actually learning to play?
Man. Learning to play guitar, Dude, my guitar and music journey has been rough. So, my mom really didn't want me to get into rock music. I
Mm,
played piano. My folks put me into piano, and I didn't get anything out of it. Like I had and have a lot of issues with anxiety and performance anxiety. So I wasn't able to get around that when I was younger. Like that's all I could focus on. And I never learned to read sheet music. So I just watched what the instructor was doing with her hands, and I just did that.
yeah.
And I mean that sounds cool. I've heard other people say that, but it doesn't get you very far.
Mm.
So I didn't get very far, and I did like one, maybe two performances, and I stopped doing it.
Well, the piano has a lot of
But
keys. That's like a lot of things. That's a lot of places to remember.
yeah, I mean, like honestly, the piano's really hard. I mean, there's people that can play it beautifully, but
Mm.
I like to be fair, I would love to get a synth and I would love to learn to play the
Yeah.
keys, but I'll probably do that someday. But when I was 14, maybe 15, I finally got a guitar, and my mom let me get a guitar, and I got it, and I was really into it, and I was like, I wanted to play like Van Halen. That's what I
Mm.
wanted to play. So that's what I started playing. And in retrospect, I did pretty damn good for starting. Like I thought I was terrible. Like everything was so hard. It was really hard to get my fingers to behave. It still is actually. But like I was playing Ain't Talking About Love pretty early, and like it sounded okay. I practiced that intro riff over and over and over and over again until I could play it with my eyes closed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I never thought I was good. I had a friend that got a guitar at about the same time, and I was like, "Dude, we could play together. This will be great." He also had an electric guitar, so it was just
Mm.
like two electric guitars, which is a little weird. And I wasn't into singing at the time, but we were playing, and he didn't practice as much as I did, so I got ahead of him, and he just stopped playing. He's like, "You're just better than me, and I don't want to play." I'm like, "Well, that's not how this is supposed to work. Like, it doesn't." Well, it was very, very discouraging. So I put the guitar up for a while. And then I got back into it, but my girlfriend at the time did not like it. So I put it away. And I got back into it when I was living on my own.
Mm.
And so it's just been like this up and down sort of thing. And I've always had trouble with chords and chord progressions and stuff. And at some point, I just decided to do away with these funky shapes and just tune my guitar to the key that I want to play in.
Mm.
So if you see me playing and I'm just moving my hand up and down and not really doing crazy stuff, I'm using one finger because I have my guitar tuned to open D. So I
Mm.
just move it to different places to play different major chords, and then you can augment it. But it makes rhythmic playing really, really easy, and that's just my style.
I, 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 I think the concern that someone, you can make the argument like, oh, you're not doing it properly. But I think at the end of the day,
Good.
if you're having fun with it, I think
Sure.
that's way more important. Like your friend that dropped it, like he stopped playing the guitar. Like you're playing the
Yeah.
guitar. It doesn't matter that you're playing in this certain way. Like you're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. People are strange. I mean, when you want to be good and you're not, and somebody else is good and you want to be, that can be really painful, you know? So like I get it.
Mm.
I saw other guitarists and they were awesome, and then I'm coming in there, I barely make a G shape, and I'm just like, no, I'm done. But yeah, like another thing, when I had my guitar tuned weirdly, people
Mm.
would be like, that's not how you're supposed to play. And like, at the time I'd be like, yeah, it's because I suck and I'm making the guitar work for me. But now that I'm like older and wiser, I'm like, yeah, I suck, and I'm making the instrument work for me in a way that doesn't suck. So, but I
Mm.
mean, like, if you think about it, it's your instrument, it's your tool. Who is telling you that it has to be in standard tuning?
Mm.
Oh, well, open, drop D is lame, open. It's like, I don't care. Like I'm up here jamming and rocking, and you're over there telling me how bad I suck. You're not
Mm.
making music, I am. So just like, it's your tool, make it work for you.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Like there was a video I saw I don't know a week or so ago where someone stringed their bass like a guitar just for the meme of it.
Yeah.
And
What
like,
did it sound like? Like, I'm curious.
it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to, like, there's bands like White Stripes. There's all sorts of experimental bands. They're doing all sorts of, like, Sonic Youth was the early one that was really influential, but like they're doing all sorts of weird, crazy stuff. So where is this elitism coming from? Like, you can only play in standard tuning. Like, can you? Okay, the person saying that, can you play in an alternate tuning? Because if not, then what are you telling me for? I like alternate tunings.
When I see someone do, like, it's not just at learning guitar. Like when I see someone doing something at a high level, like I am also doing like starting to learn how to play golf, and when I see someone doing something at a high level,
fun.
like it's just I don't get disheartened. Like when I see, like, you can get disheartened by, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix. Like, sure, you could get disheartened by that, but also it's Jimi Hendrix. Like that's something impressive to see. Like, gain inspiration from that. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, ideally you would gain inspiration from that, but it's really easy to get into that. Like, I'll never be that good, so why should I even try? Like, I don't know.
I think that's where it goes back to just find some way to have fun with whatever you're doing. Like, don't, you could learn, I could right now go and find a guitar instructor that's going to be like, okay, you're going to learn how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and you're going to learn how to play that until you can strum perfectly, and I will drop it in 2 lessons.
Yeah, exactly. No, actually, I want to take that example and tell you a story about kind of that with me. I've never had guitar lessons ever. Everything I've done is self-taught. I did take vocal lessons, voice lessons, like a couple times. I was working at this place, and I was so like blessed to be working there at that time because it was a really difficult time in my life, and it was a well-paying job. But the company that, like, we were a satellite office, and they didn't have any friggin' work for us. So, like, a lot of days we were just engineers chilling at this office in downtown Portland, and the area was like beautiful. And like some days we just, like, me and this guy Dave, we would just go for like a walk for hours. It's just nothing to do. But anyways, so Dave coincidentally was a guitarist, and this other guy, I don't remember his name, but he was like a singer. He did all sorts of stuff. But he got me hooked up with a vocal coach, and I saw her a couple times, and I just, like, one of the first things I said in this was that I don't like being told what to do. So I'm like, I'm singing, and she's like, no, that's not how this works. You have to do it like this. And I'm like, okay. And then after 2 lessons, I'm like, this is not fun. I need to be having fun. I'm sorry. Like, I can't do something unless I'm enjoying it and doing these stupid exercises. You know what I liked? I loved it when she would play a note and I would match that pitch. And I'm like, can we do that? And she's like, no, you need to work on singing with your stomach,
Yep.
And I'm like, no, I understand. I need to learn that, but I don't want to. I want to learn how to match what you're doing on the keyboard. So we had a disconnect, and I bailed. But yeah, like, you got to be like what you said about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like, that's not fun. That's not going to keep you engaged. For some people, like, that's not a bad way of teaching holistically. Like, there's a lot of people, a lot of kids, whatever, that learn that way. But me personally, no, that is not my style.
I think this is where it's like where the internet can, like, really help out with a lot of things. Like, you've got all of these different ways that you can approach something now. Like programming, for example. Like, you can learn programming by going to the university. You can go through your courses. You can learn computer science. You do all of this stuff that, is probably good in the long run. But you could also go and pick up, say, a tutorial on YouTube that's going to teach you the fundamentals of Python, and it's going to give you this fun exercise you can go through, and you can approach it that way as well. And the same thing, like, with sort of anything else. Like, the internet's opened up this way that a lot of people can learn things in a very different way because the people who are teaching
Mhm.
them, the reason they're teaching it a lot of the time is because this is the way that they wish they had learned. Like
Hmm.
they got that traditional learning experience and they hated it, but there's this better way that the information can be brought to you that you might actually keep it up and in the long run enjoy it a lot more.
Hmm. That's an interesting that is an interesting observation. So, if somebody wants to learn programming
Mm,
and they don't want to go to university, would you if that person that wants to learn but
mm.
doesn't want to go to university, if they tune into a YouTube channel, YouTube character personality, and is learning how to code from their videos, presumably learning, would you say that they are self-taught, or would you say that that channel is who taught them? Like, if you graduated from a university with a computer science degree, how
Mm.
did you become a programmer? Well, I went to school for it. Okay. So if you learned everything from YouTube, are you self-taught or are you a YouTube programmer?
I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I've heard this. Like, we'll go back to the music thing. Like, I've heard a lot of guitarists say they are self-taught guitarists. They learned from things online. Like, you would like the way you would consider like the way I would look at self-taught is you're just like dicking around on the guitar and you eventually work out like this. These are things that sound good. Like that, I would say is someone who is like truly self-taught. I
Mhm.
think a lot of people want to use that term self-taught because they didn't go through some more like traditional means that some would accept as, you've had an education in this thing, like you've had guitar lessons from a professional instructor, you've gone
Hmm.
to a university to learn programming or like done some sort of like post education course on programming like that like some would, they wouldn't consider that self-taught, even though in that experience you're the one who's still really teaching yourself the information. Like no one can, you can be presented the information. Like someone can say this is how you would play a G chord, but you're ultimately the person who has to teach yourself like the finger placement for that, the way that like feels the most comfortable with your like hand size and your like arm length and things like that.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's a really tough question, isn't it? I'd never really thought of that.
I'm glad to have asked a thought-provoking question. I think about some of the stuff that inspired me, and I think that that's the key word for my own growth
Mm.
is when I'm inspired. I don't know, like when I'm inspired, sometimes I'll listen to a piece of music and I'm just like, oh, this is good stuff. And lately, what I've done, kind of an exercise, a self-teaching exercise that I've been doing is I listen to these songs that I really, really like. And maybe they're rock songs, maybe they're not. But I listen to them and I get a feel for what key they're in. And
Mm.
I've been focusing on that. Like, what key is this song in? Because if you know that, then you can play it, but like your version of it. I've never been a good musician that can emulate a style. And that was something that really held me back for a long time because so much instruction from YouTube or from books is
Mm.
like, play this song. It's a Led Zeppelin song. And it's like when I play it, it does not sound like Led Zeppelin. It sounds like not Led Zeppelin. I don't know what it sounds like. But then you watch somebody like at a guitar store and they're playing a song, you can hear them from the other side and it's like, I know what that is.
Mm.
But if I went over there and played it, it would sound like just like total butt. So I think there's something to be said about playing to your strengths,
Mm.
and emulating styles is just not a strength of mine.
Mm.
So going back to this exercise, I'd find songs that are just they only use like major key, like just in major. There's not all this crazy augmented stuff going on, and I figure out the chord progression like for the keys, and then once I do that, I can just like pick a key and just solo along with the song and just riff,
Mm.
and it's finger practice. It feels really good to me because like when you cover a song, when you play along with the track, you're hearing it
Mm.
and you dig it. You know, you're playing a song that you like. I'm thinking of a couple songs where I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But you've heard it enough times that you know when, you know, like something, the chorus is coming up, there's an interlude or something, and you're preparing for it. That's how I am anyways, but
Mm.
it's a really fun exercise that gets my ears in tune with the music, but also like it works my fingers on the fretboard. I've never heard of anybody. I'm not saying that there isn't anybody, but like I've been around and I've never heard of people saying that is a that's a good way of practicing.
Mm.
Like pick a song, find the key all by yourself. Like don't go look it up because that takes part of the exercise out. Like figure it out. You know, like I have a little thing on my guitar that tells me what key I'm playing in,
Yep.
which I recommend to everybody to get one of the things that goes on the head,
Yep,
so
yep.
you know what you're doing. And I just like play along until I hear it, until I hear that like harmony. And then I'm
Mm.
like, this is the key. All right, let's feel around and find a shape that works for it. And then that's it. It's really, really fun.
Mm. That
Yeah.
does sound really exciting.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a good way to practice just like riffing and jamming,
Mm.
I found. Yeah.
You know, look, maybe at some point I'll mess around with that, but right now I'm just sort of I'm enjoying just learning like the different chord shapes. I'm still at this very early stage where like everything is new and everything is exciting. So look, I got plenty of time. I can barely play some chords right now, so like there's still plenty of time to get better at them. My G still
Sure.
sounds a little bit rattly sometimes. No, you're learn something new. You're not pushing the strings down hard enough. It sounds a little bit off, or you're just slightly over into the next fret, and it's just slightly
Well,
off.
for you and for anybody else interested in this sort of
Mm,
stuff, I was actually talking to a friend the other day about some challenges I had playing
mm,
music early on that I didn't know were challenges because again, it's one of those things. No, I never heard anybody talk about this stuff, and at some level, it's like really frustrating because these issues were holding me back without a
mm.
question. I always thought I had little hands. Like I always thought my hands were just small and too small to play on guitar. But
Mm,
then they're not actually. They're totally There's nothing wrong with my hands. The issue was the guitar. A
mm,
lot
mm,
of guitars have fat, chunky necks, and they're hard
mm,
to work around, So like the guitar that I have has a little tiny neck. Like it's really small. I can wrap my whole hand around it without any trouble. And the action on the strings
mm.
is really, really low.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just look at the strings and I compress them. So on the flip side, that means that I'm constantly having to adjust my truss rod. And to be fair, oftentimes you need a pretty expensive guitar to be able to have low action because like the fretboard's got to be perfect and all this other stuff. But yeah, like sometimes you might be playing the guitar and you're like, I just can't make these shapes. I just can't press down on all of these. Well, the problem might be the neck,
Mm,
like it might be too fat. The like of the fretboard could be off. So there's a lot that goes into that I don't really hear instructors and stuff talk about it. Like I'm having trouble working with, oh, you just got to work at it. You just got to work at it. If the neck is too big, it will never be comfortable, like it's
mm.
that just in retrospect that frustrated me because I had a guitar for a long time with a really wide nut. I know that sounds funny, but the thing at the top is the nut. Hey, and it determines how thick the neck is, and it was really freaking wide, so it was hard to do anything with. Like in standard tuning, making like a bar chord, forget it. I didn't have the hand strength to do it, and I wouldn't
Mm.
want that. Like just get a guitar that is meant for you.
Give me one second. Go and grab mine. Is this cable long enough? Let's find out.
We're gonna find out. Here we
Oh,
go.
just long enough.
I like the color of that. What is it? Tell us about
It is the cheapest thing I could find. That's what it is.
it. That's okay.
It's from a
Nothing
local
wrong with
Australian
that.
company, called Artist
Okay.
Guitars. Um, Yeah, I didn't really think too much about, like, I didn't do too much research when I like actually went and bought it, so I didn't think too much
Hmm.
about things like that. But I don't have any issue doing anything with it. It might sound a bit funky because I got my noise suppression on, so if it does sound, you know, I'm going to show you something.
It's
If I play an E minor right now, it's going to sound really bad. Uh,
that's okay. That sounded fine.
do I not have my noise suppression on? Do I not have
Yeah,
it on?
do it again.
It should. Okay. Usually when I have the noise suppression on. It should have sounded real funky. Like, it sounds fine on my side.
Yeah, that's the intro chord to a song called "Cover Me" by Candlebox. That's a good one. I mean, it's A minor, but or whatever you played, but like
E
it's
minor,
a
yeah.
chord for any song. But you played that, and my mind was like, "Oh, that's Cover Me," which is a really good song, by the way. Candlebox, if you like grunge,
I think I recognize the song.
it's really good. It's very very emotional.
But like, yeah, my expectation there was like the call. Like, I've tried to capture it like with my current setup, like just to see if I had to like mess around with anything, and it's always sounded like real. Like, a lot of the noise was just cut out, and I know it's because of my noise suppression. So it sounded fine there. I'm real surprised that it did.
Hey, that's okay. Yeah, it sounds good to me. I'd play, but I'd have to move the old microphone and change my whole ass setup.
No, that's
I mean,
totally
I'm not
fair.
opposed to it. But
Just turn
you
the rest
jam.
of the show into you playing the guitar.
I mean, I could, like, yeah, maybe I could play you out with some tunes.
That'd be cool. But no, as I said,
What am I doing?
I've just been like having fun learning stuff, basically.
Good. You should be having a good time. Yeah, you learn. I think people learn better when they're having fun, right? Like all of those good memories from school. I mean, like you're having a good time, you're laughing. Hopefully, anyway. Like that's how it is for me. I think back of school. I think back at school, and I think of all the fun that I had, right? So why can't practice be fun?
Yeah, like when I was going through, like I think most people have this experience when they're going through school. They sort of, especially when you get towards the end, you sort of want it to be over because you're like, hey, I want to be an adult. I want to go out into the world. And then you get out into the world, you're like, this isn't that great, is it? It's sort of just like the same, but more responsibilities.
That's how it is.
That is how it is. Well, one thing I did want to, since we were on the topic of your content earlier, I guess some people probably don't even know you do this, but you did mention at the start you have your ASMR as well.
You
do a lot of things. You do gaming stuff. You do Linux stuff. You got music stuff. You got ASMR stuff. Like,
yeah, I've wanted to do motorcycle and travel stuff too. That's something that's been on my backlog for a long time, and I'll get to it someday. That's actually of all of the things. This is funny. People might know me. A lot of people know me from Linux. A lot of people now know me from ASMR, and I guess, like a few people know me from my music stuff. But what I started out doing was cars and motorcycles, working on cars and going on motorcycle trips with a camera. That's what I started on YouTube doing.
Okay.
Good stuff. I'd love to get back into it, but it's. Oh no!
I just wanted the ASMR channel and it had the autoplay video just start.
Oh dear!
I'll have that muted now so it doesn't happen again.
But yeah, I'd like to get back into that. It's really really fun. But I'm at this point I'm just kind of going with the flow. Like another summer has gone by and I didn't make a motorcycle video, and that hurts. Like that actually, like I look at my bike and I'm like, oh, you're so pretty. There's so much I could do with you, but there's always next year. But you got the Egee channel. It's like sitting there doing its thing, making guitar videos on Nuevo Egee and Open Egee. That's a thing. I don't know.
What made you want to, of all the things, what made you want to do ASMR videos?
People had made comments about my microphones and like the audio, like my voice and stuff. And I've always been really into listening to ASMR, just either working. It's usually while working. Like a lot of people use it for bed. I use it for working, really, like if I'm focusing on something and it helps block out what's going on. And it helps if the person has like, if I'm listening to a person, sometimes it's just noise, but if I'm listening to a person, they have a nice voice that is easy for my brain to like flip to another channel and leave it there. And then I'm focusing on my work, you know?
Yeah.
But I was like, I wonder how this Shure SM57, which is not this microphone, it's another one that I had, but I wonder how my SM57 would do ASMR. And spoiler, it wasn't good, honestly. I don't think the 57 did very good. I think that this microphone works super well with my voice, but the 57 did not. But it was difficult and it was really uncomfortable. But the feedback that I got made me kind of like more interested in it. Like, where could I go with this? You know? So I just like kind of went with it and I kept getting positive feedback. And that positive feedback was so opposite from what I got from the Egee channel. Like on the Egee channel, I had people saying like, you know, screw you and your opinions and you did this wrong and that video sucked and you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And I just like got used to that. I was like, this is just YouTube. People suck. And sometimes I wonder why I'm even here. And then I went over to OpenEG without the intention of building a community. Like I was just messing with sound, you know? But all these people came out and they were like, this is rad. Like, we want to listen to you. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why do you want to listen to me? You know, for the past N number of years, I've had people tell me that I suck. So this is different. So I just like ran with it. And now it's kind of spiraled into this thing where now I sit and make 40-minute videos where I'm just talking about nothing. I mean, all right. Like, it's fun. It's so weird when I'm doing it. Like, it's the whole situation is so surreal. And I can see what's happening from the like through the camera on the TV over here. So I'm like, this is bizarre.
What a frame for Discord to pause on. What? We're back.
Oh, is it?
It's been freaking out today.
So I opened BTOP so that I can monitor my network, and my network isn't dropping or anything. So
it might be my side that I don't know.
What if we switch regions? I wonder what region it shows.
It's a good question. How do you even check that?
What if we do
watch this break the call?
Like either Sydney or US West.
What are we on now?
Automatic, so I don't know.
Try something and see what happens.
All right, let's go to Sydney and see what it does.
I thought the call just died.
Did it die? Yeah,
it did for a moment.
Let's see if this is better.
You might be better on my side. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, the footage needs to be good for you, so wherever it's best on your side, seeing me. Like, if you freeze frame, like, I don't care.
Yeah, that's fair.
Technical difficulties.
It'll always happen. It's better than the call just straight up dropping. So, hey, there's that at least.
Yeah, I'm always really paranoid about my network, so I'm like, I'm going to watch it, and it's good, so it must be Discord side.
You mentioned some of the feedback you've had over on the Linux side.
Yeah.
I did a bit of snooping around your comments section. I noticed something very interesting.
Go on.
I noticed some very familiar names. Some of those people who left a lot of the hate comments over like frequent videos, I recognized the names from my channel. Some of them I didn't recognize, but every time I saw one of them, I copied their name into my like YouTube studio, and there was always at least a couple of hate comments from them on my channel.
Huh.
Not some people, have, legitimate criticism, but there are some people out there who I think just like being angry. It doesn't matter what it's about. It can be about your opinion on Linux. It can be about, I don't know, anime. It can be about literally anything. some people out there just want to find some reason to not like you. It can be anything. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
Yeah, I had a really bad relationship with my community for a
Mm.
long time, and I've got as Open Egee has really helped me disconnect myself personally from people making comments and attacking my content.
Yep.
And another thing is that, like, when I read comments, I read them as an American, speaking as an American. A lot of people they don't speak English as their primary language, and
Mm.
a lot of other countries are very blunt when they speak. Like, that's
Mm.
just how they're not being mean. They're just saying it how it is. And when I read that through the lens of an American, it comes across as like, that guy's a jackass. But
Mm.
in reality, they're just saying it how it is. They're not trying to be mean. So I remember I did a Debian video where I was like, here's how you install it or something. And somebody was like, you don't actually have to, like, there was something that I glossed over that I made it sound like you had to do, but you didn't have to do. And they were like, you don't actually have to do that. But like, I don't think that they were being rude. I think that they were just saying it, and I
Mm.
took it badly. So I try to be more open-minded in that regard. I mean, to be honest, a lot of times I read comments, but I try not to react or respond to them because I want them to just like kind of bounce off, and
Mm.
then I can walk away from the computer and let the criticism or perceived criticism just kind of go. So I've built a more healthy relationship with the community in that regard.
That's something I've definitely had to work on myself. Like, I okay, for context, there was a period of time where I got like, this was like 5 or 6 years ago, where I got like really into like political discussions on Twitter, and
Hmm.
I would sit there
That was
for
a
hours
bad
upon
move.
yeah, it's a terrible idea. Waste your life. Where I would sit there for like hours and hours of the day just arguing about nonsense. And as like there are occasions where that sort of comes back out with the channel where I will get into this long thread with someone, and it's something that I've definitely been trying to work on. Nowadays, what I mainly aim to do is if someone is trying to have like an actual discussion, like I did a video about Rust in the Linux kernel,
Hmm.
and the comments that I try to respond to now are where I can have some sort of useful discussion. Like one of the examples is someone said this isn't a great example of because the video I did was this is a blog that's anti-Rust, this is a blog that's pro-Rust, and I present them
Hmm.
both in the video. And someone said, hey, this isn't a great example of an anti-Rust blog. So I was like, okay, what would be a better example? That person was, offering. I feel like they were trying to offer that feedback in a productive way, not saying, this is a terrible choice. Why did you use this? It was framed in a way that I think was helpful. And there are other comments like, I don't think Rust is going to be good for the kernel, and don't really expand upon it. And I kind of prompt
Hmm.
them for that expansion. But when it's those comments that are just trying to bring you down for the sake of bringing you down,
Hmm.
I think there is a, I think there is a, you can, how would I phrase this? If you don't connect yourself too much to the reply and you sort of just throw it out there just
Hmm.
for the sake of it, I think you can have some fun with it. But the issue you get there is once you respond to a comment that's like that, they know they've got your attention,
Hmm.
and that's when you can let yourself get dragged in, even if you're not trying to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. My EG videos there's not a lot of throughput anymore, so the people that watch them presumably are people that are subscribed and engaged in what I'm doing. So,
Well, except that
this is
one
like,
dedicated person who leaves a hate comment on seemingly every video that I've noticed.
people can do that. I guess it's all good. It's all good anymore. But the throughput has dropped which like it might, the YouTube dashboard makes it sound like it's bad. It's like, oh man, you know, your views are down, you've got all this stuff.
10 out of
Like,
10, 10 out of 10.
yeah, it's 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Every time I look at my dashboard, it's like that video didn't do good. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Why? Like, I talked about this in an Open Egee video, actually, but like, I don't want to go to my channel and see negativity. You know, like that sounds, you know, like it might sound silly, but like the bottom line is that I'm not here to build a business. I'm not here to make money. I'm here because YouTube is a convenient video host, and it's also a convenient way of sharing what I'm doing with people that are interested. Now, there's like a built-in search feature. You know, people can discovery, find your videos, and anybody can find your videos, and anybody can leave comments, and that's fine. But why do you have to show me that negativity every time I log into my damn channel? It's very frustrating. If I just want to see comments for a video, I have to go to the creator's dashboard first, unless I've bookmarked it. And the creator's dashboard is going to say, hey, that last video you did, it sucked. Well, maybe it was a shit post and I wasn't expecting anything out of it. Why are you making a big deal? It's inferring so much from the existence of the video. Like, oh, you must have wanted this to be popular. Maybe I didn't. Like, it's none of your business, really. You know, like it's. I saw somebody say on Twitter, unsolicited advice is always criticism, or something along those lines. And it's like, I'm not asking for this analytic, like these analytics, and you're providing them to me in a way that is negative. So I don't know who thought that was a good idea, or like who in the Google meeting room said, let's force analytics on everybody. Like, why do that? You know, I don't want it. I just want to upload videos and occasionally see what people say about it. That's it. That's what I want to get out of YouTube. And the analytics stuff is very frustrating to me, if you can't tell.
No, I totally get it. Like, that data is incredibly valuable for, like, if you're trying to build a business, you're trying to, like, you know, you're trying to get your content out there. But one of the things I would like from the YouTube studio is if there was, you know, some level of customization. Like, if you want to see this information or you don't want to see it, like, you could, you know, maybe you just want to show your comments on that main page. Like, I think the dashboard, like, they keep adding in these features here and there, like I don't know if you even know this, if you go to your, I think it's under your, like, your analytics section, and then, like, there's, like, a research section or something, you can, like, search by, tags that people that watch your channel commonly search for. Like, you know, maybe have some way to display that on the homepage if that's what you want to see, or you want to just see the comments on the homepage. You don't want to see the 10 out of 10 thing. Like, let me just hide that if I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's always going to be in your face. And, you know, when the number's good, like, that's great. But there are some days where, like, I'll see that, like, this video, like, I have this bad habit of checking my analytics, like, first thing in the morning, and this is a problem, because if you do that,
you gotta stop that.
Yeah, no, I'm very aware it's a problem. But yeah, you see a video and you're like, this should do well, and it's like 10 out of 10, like.
Yeah, I mean, like, unless
and it ruins your entire
actively
day.
It does, though. Like, even if you're like, I don't care about that video, it's like, hey, by the way, that did bad, and it's like, you didn't have to say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, you want people to see what you're doing. Like, that's, if you didn't want people to see it, you just unlist it. But there's a difference between that and having the numbers just always in your face, no matter what you do.
I actually think that there's a balance that could be struck in that, what if I want to release a video for people who are interested in Egee and no one else, right? Because you can do it unlisted, but that won't tell your subscribers or anybody. You'd have to syndicate it yourself.
Oh, so you want to, like, just send, you want, like, only visible to subs?
Yeah, or only notify or only make discoverable by subs or people like if you know there's lots I watch channels that I'm not sub to.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's just it shows up in my feed and I find myself going back to that person. If there was some way to synthesize that and say I'm only interested in producing like this video is targeted for my community.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's very niche, it's very specific to people that are interested in Egee, you know, maybe it's art or something. But if it's broadcasted, like that's actually a really interesting thing. If I wanted to do something, make a video that is art related or something about Egee and make it public, everybody that subscribes to Egee would see it. And somebody that's interested in Linux is like, I don't care about this art garbage. I'm not, you know, thumbs down, I'll leave a nasty comment, get this shit out of here. But I don't want that though. That was intended for my followers, right? There's no way of doing that. And I think that's really frustrating. Like I guess there's YouTube like memberships or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's the only
but
way you can do it. Yeah.
I don't want the financial piece, like at least not at this point in time. Like it's just it's weird that this is a niche thing that is easily facilitated by the existing tooling, but they just haven't done.
I think the issue comes with the like what YouTube is. It's a public video sharing platform. They want the content to go out there and get viral, and that's, you know, the way they make money off the content. Like I get it from a business perspective, but from a creative perspective, I think that would be like an incredibly useful tool. Like there are a lot of platforms that have tools like this, like art platform, music platforms, things like this, where like even Patreon. So you can follow a Patreon page, and then you will see what is, you know, part of that page.
Yeah,
it's
a cool model. Yeah.
I would love that if YouTube. I wouldn't use it myself because I do like my stuff sort of going out there, but I totally get wanting to keep things in a niche community.
Yeah, that would be if there was like a target audience member for that. That would be me. That would be the Egee channel. Like I'm not really interested in the videos. Like I've got some videos that are really popular and continue to be popular because of their nature, like a Windows versus Ubuntu video from years ago is like it's still showing up, and that's fine, you know. It's one of the older videos where I look back and I'm like, man, I could do that a lot better today. But it's a lot of work, you know. I don't it's not that I don't want to do Linux content like that. I don't want to do it right now. I'm just not feeling it. I'm doing so much stuff, really cool, crazy stuff at my job, and I just don't have any leftover passion to make Egee stuff right now. I will someday. Like it's not over, you know. Like I've been doing gaming videos, stuff like that. I'm just not passionate about making videos about it. I'm passionate about it, but I'm using that passion at my job.
Yeah.
So like stuff that I would be making videos about, I'm just like I'm doing, and I spend all my day doing for the company that I work for. And there's no passion left over to make videos. And it's like I said, Egee's not gone. It's just that's just the way things are right now.
No, I totally get that. Like I'm not like I don't have a job where I'm heavily making use of Linux. So this is sort of is my outlet for what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
I get people wanting to come, like, I don't know.
Well, you know, it's
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no. I want to say something. I want to speak to that actually, because you said that you work at a job you don't use Linux, so you come here and you talk about Linux.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. I'm the opposite. When I was doing lots of Linux videos, when I was making Distro Delves episodes, I wasn't using Linux at work.
Yeah.
I was using Windows or I was unemployed. So an interesting thing for folks listening, when I was doing Distro Delves episodes and I had like 3 seasons, I was unemployed. I did not have a full-time job. So when people are like, we want Distro Delves back, I want it too, but there's just not enough time in the day for me to do regular episodes and hold down. I mean, I work like 12-hour days every day. There's no way for me to do that. And at this point, I would love to. You know, maybe in the future, something will work out and I can, you know, take time during the week and make episodes and stuff. But right now, it's just no time. I can't do it. But I work at a place where we use Linux. I manage Linux. I work with open source developers working in the community. I'm getting my fill, man. Like, I don't need an outlet.
Well, I think
I've made it.
I think it really depends on like what you want to be doing. Like I know someone who he is I think he's developer at his job and does like DevOps stuff on his channel. Like it's very connected, but that's sort of what he enjoys from it. And
Yeah.
hey, more power to you if that's what you want to be doing. But I
Sure.
also totally get where you're coming from as well, where, you know, you want to do other things. And that's where that ASMR stuff comes in. That's where the motorcycle stuff that you're not doing it comes in that you
Totally
really, really
different.
want to be doing at some point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
it's
the other things you want
completely
to be doing.
different. Yeah, it's nice to I get that not everybody has such diverse hobbies and the drive and tenacity to like make content for them. But I mean, I do. And that's what I do, and that's what brings me joy.
I think that's a very good point. A lot of people don't really have diverse hobbies. This is a whole other discussion, but like there's a lot of people out there who have like one hobby they dedicate themselves to. And that's great. But
Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all.
I think it's fun to try out new things. Like whatever it is. Maybe you don't stick with it. Maybe it's not something you do long term, but it's fun to be like to become a beginner at something. Like, you know, that initial I was saying this earlier, like the initial stage of doing anything, it's exciting. You're learning all this new stuff. It's like you see how far things can go, but you really don't know where you are in that whole spectrum. Like, say for example, you're like just getting we'll go back to the guitar. Like starting with the guitar, I can see like there's these crazy guitarists out there can do these incredible things, and I can see what I can do on a guitar, but I can't really see what the distance between that actually is. It's not until that like intermediate stage where you have enough of an understanding of where you're at and how things actually function, where you can see how big that gap really is. Like the more you know something, there's a term for this, but the more you know something, the more you realize like how much there is to really learn about it. And I find that really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some level of excitement that goes into learning a thing and everything that goes along with it. It's also scary, you know? Like, I don't know, when I don't know, part of what makes the Open Egee journey fun is I'm using it as a way to teach myself audio production. Because as fun as it is, you can't, I mean, to be fair, I guess you can just put a microphone down and start talking to it, and like that's a thing. Yeah, but if I'm feeling it, like if I'm feeling spunky, I will put my audio into an editor and I'll try to do crazy layered stuff. I'll mess around with the different, like the peaks and valleys in the audio, make things sound louder or quieter. And it's fun. Like, how else would I do that? You know, like that's kind of everything that I do and have done is self-taught. Like that's guitar, that's music stuff in general.
Self-taught? Go back to this discussion.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, that's actually a good point. I didn't really watch YouTube videos. I listened to music and I just kind of put it together. There's a few that I watched, but that's where I was channeling. Like, am I a YouTube taught person or am I self-taught? But like going to coding and stuff, it's all kind of self-taught, and you only know what you know. So, well, that's what I was saying. Audio production, right? That's where I was going with that. Well. So how do you teach yourself that? Like what process do you go through to teach yourself audio production? I guess I could record music and stuff and try to do crazy things with it. Or I could use Open Egee and try to make the audio sound awesome. You know, because there's a target audience. People want something soft, smooth, harsh. I mean, like there's all sorts of different sounds that you can get out of the medium, the format that is
Mm.
ASMR. So it's just like a huge sandbox. And I think I call myself in the about section. I think I say that it's like a sonic soundbox or sandbox or some silly poetic thing. But that's what it is. You know, like I make a 40-minute long video that I have to turn around and listen to and then edit, and it's all just part of the learning experience.
Mm. No, that totally makes sense. Like I wouldn't even I know like from listening to lots of recordings of my own voice that I do not have the I could probably make something work, but I don't feel like I have a way of speaking that at all works with ASMR. Like,
Well, teach yourself. You got to try it and figure out what works. Like I didn't just start doing it
well,
and be
you also
perfect, you
have
know?
this like you seem to have this natural like calm way of speaking. I tend to have like a lot of, high and low inflections, and a lot of people tell me that I tend to shout a lot when I'm speaking. And I can speak in a more calm fashion, but it's just that's not the way that I'm sort of typically speaking. You're sort of more predisposed to that calm way, it seems.
Yeah, but I taught myself how to do that, right? Like
That's fair.
when I was starting to do live streams on the Egee channel, I still had my SM57. Like it's currently in use. That's why
Mm,
it's not here now, but I had both of them and I have two mic stands. So when I would do streams, I would be talking to both mics on separate channels.
mm,
And that was fun. Like that was actually really enjoyable. But through my mixer, I had to set up my audio levels and I had to make sure I wasn't speaking too loud because it would strain my voice. So
uh,
there was a lot of like practice and conditioning that went into learning how to speak. I mean, if you just listen to my older EG videos and compare my voice and delivery from then to there, like there's conscious effort to make my like really make my voice behave the way that I want it to.
mm.
And I mean, like what you're saying,
No,
having, highs and lows, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
no, I get what you're saying there. It's just the way that I've adjusted my voice. Like, I've definitely adjusted my voice over time, like intentionally. But the way that I've done it is to bring it more in line with the way that I naturally speak. Like the way I'm typically speaking on the podcast is more in line with the way I'm normally speaking. Whereas if you
Mm.
go back to like my like edited, scripted, whatever you want to call it, videos of the main channel, it was this very flat, monotone thing, which I just didn't find to be the way I wanted to present stuff. But I'm sure I could make something work with ASMR. Maybe if I sat down and actually like properly tried it out, like I could make something work. It's just that's not something that like I've never really been that interested in ASMR anyway. So it's just not something that I've really considered
Sure.
trying out to like get to a point where I could actually, reasonably do it without blowing out people's eardrums.
That's always a fear. I'm like, God, the audio levels and yeah, but it's fun.
I'm sure it's fun. Yeah.
I like
It's
challenging myself.
well yeah, there's definitely that. It's a very different style. Like it's very different than the distro delves. Like it's complete like it's not like, hey, we're doing a Linux video and we're doing a software showcase. Like they're still sort of in the same vein. The ASMR stuff is like entirely different. It's a whole different way of creating a whole different style of content and creative endeavor that I'm sure is exciting in its own way.
Sure, yeah. It is completely different. And that is definitely one of the things that makes it exciting. But I mean, I could say the same thing about producing music and guitar
Mm.
stuff. Like my most recent guitar video, I'm listening to it and I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then I send it to a friend and they're like, are my headphones cutting out? It sounds like it's behind a pillow or something. And I'm like, So I listened to it and I'm like, I do kind of get that. And then I listen to, a song that I like and it's really bright and wide and
Mm,
huge. And then I go back to my track and I'm like, wow, this is it's not good, but it is definitely different.
mm.
And music production is so fun. Depending on where there's a lot of crossover with ASMR actually, because I mean, my voice is the instrument, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not music, but it is the instrument. And, based on where I am talking to the microphone changes the characteristics of all of it. And it's like that with music too. When I mic up my amps, sometimes it's at an angle, sometimes it's straight on. This is not a guitar mic, this is a vocal mic, so it sounds weird to mic up an amplifier. And for folks that aren't familiar with like a lot of people plug their amps straight into their mixers or into their computers, and you can do that too. But I just prefer using a microphone and putting it physically, apart from the speaker,
Mm,
and then recording it that way. That's just like old style of doing it, and that's how I like to record.
mm.
Yeah, so when I'm recording music, this is pointing at the microphone. And I mean, actually,
Okay.
if you still want to do the guitar thing, I can play around with that. It's really fun.
No, that makes sense. Like I did like briefly look at your. I didn't watch the entire thing, but the video about how you capture guitar stuff on Linux.
Oh yeah,
I guess I
yeah, that
guess
was.
that makes sense. There's like different ways you do it. Like it makes sense that a more like traditional way would be to just stick a mic in front of it because
Hmm?
it would have been there wouldn't have been any sensible way to do it otherwise. But now with now with the fancy tech we have now, like, can I grab it without disturbing anything?
It's
We
gonna
ha- oh,
crash everything. Oh, it's gonna knock it over.
I'm just gonna point at this. We have
Oh
this.
yeah, look at that thing. Oh wait, is that a Yamaha?
It is.
Oh, look at you with your Shure microphone and Yamaha mixer. You kidding me,
Yeah, I know, right? It's what
Mr. Hi-Fi over here?
it's what having you know wasting money on things that are probably a little bit overkill will get you.
I'm pretty sure I know what that mixer is. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's the MG10XU.
My mixer, I don't want to touch it because Linux doesn't like it very much.
Mm.
And remember I told you about the chipmunk thing?
Mm.
Before we got rolling, I was saying my voice might sound like a chipmunk because Pulse freaked out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't like the sample rate that this mixer wants to run at. So if it gets bothered, it will screw up and I'll sound like a chipmunk or I'll sound like really baritone. So I don't want to even like look at it. But it's a Behringer Euphoria UMC 202 HD. And I've tried other mixers, and this one adds a certain warmth to my voice that works really well with my microphones,
Yeah.
and that's why.
Yeah, I'm just like Mr. YouTuber over here. I've got everything. I've got my Shure SM7B, and we're
Yeah,
good to go.
that's a good mic, though. Look at
It's a
it's
good
good.
mic. It's
Yeah, yeah.
definitely a good mic. It's very, in the range of microphones. There's things that are a lot more expensive, but like this is, you could get a $10,000 microphone for the YouTube, but
Good.
like you don't like YouTube's compression is going to mess with stuff enough. You don't really
Yes.
need a $10,000 mic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you don't need, like Linus Tech Tips. They'll buy like a bunch of red cameras. Like, hey, we have like $100,000 in cameras on this one set. Like, do you need that for a YouTube shoot?
Well, I mean, I think that there's something to be said about getting the tool that works for the job.
Mm-mm.
My first studio microphone was a Shure SM57,
Mm.
and that's a very well known microphone for like recording drums and instruments and stuff. But it was like $100, which isn't too bad for an XLR studio, like a well known brand. I mean, the SM57 is like battle tested. Like you can't get that's the mic.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I started with. And like you said, you could go in the $10,000 range for a microphone, which is like, whoa, really? But yeah, really. I mean, if you're doing really high fidelity stuff, you need the good products. But you don't for YouTube and just amateur stuff. $100 mic. That's it. That's fine.
Yeah, a lot of people I think get a bit too concerned over what they have. where it's like, hey,
Mm.
I need to get this, I need to get this before I like even get started. I think
Yeah.
when I started my channel, I started on a laptop with a laptop webcam and a laptop microphone. It was I I would suggest not doing that because you can get like $5 apps that will turn your phone into a webcam. Just use that. Your phone
Oh.
camera is going to look so much better than any webcam you'll ever buy. Not until you get some like standalone, like mirrorless DSLR camera. That will look better. But
Mhm.
up until that point, just use your phone. It'll be fine.
I'm using just a Logitech webcam,
Yeah,
720p. I don't even know where it came from, but like, to be honest, I don't care. Like, I never. The only time I use this is at work meetings and stuff. So like,
the camera that you're seeing like on Discord, that's the I've got a C920. It looks really blown out because I've got my studio lights on for my like actual camera.
Yeah.
So it does, I could make this camera look somewhat decent, but then my actual camera would look bad, and that would be a problem for the actual recording. That would be a problem.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I don't like to feature myself in videos. I really like to hide behind the character Egee when I do my stuff, and
Yep.
that'll probably never change. The guitar stuff that I'm doing is so. I talk about this on Open Egee that like so many things that I do to push my comfort levels and see like what it feels like on the other side. And appearing in videos is just like I actually did vlogs for a very brief period of time, and I hated them so much I got rid of all of them. So I'm not that interested in being on camera or anything.
Well, I'm sure also playing the guitar in gloves might be a bit difficult as well.
Yeah, you know what's funny is because the way that I tune my guitar, I can totally do it. But it's obnoxious. And I'm gonna be honest. I've thought about associating Egee with guitaring, and I think it looks dorky. Like it's not a look I could get into. And a lot of playing guitar and performing to me is the movement of the performance. Like when I go to a concert or when I see on YouTube people playing music, I love the motion. I mean it's like basically dancing, and I love seeing that, like people really getting into the music and stuff. And I feel like I can do that without needing Egee.
That's totally
I don't
fair.
know. I'm still like I'm still figuring that out, I guess. Yeah, that's one area that is still like very gray to me.
Well, we're getting sort of close to when I probably should be ending the show off.
All right.
If you still want to do that bit of guitar stuff, we can. If you need a bit of time to set it up, I can just cut the recording, then we can start that up again.
No, if you wanna like talk about something or just like watch me set this up, it's gonna sound weird.
We did try. I've got the recording started back up again.
All right.
That was a mess.
Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate. The noise suppression. I thought I turned my noise suppression off actually.
Discord adds extra noise suppression on top of it, from my understanding. I don't know if there's like a way you can mess with that or not. I'm not too sure.
You probably can, but let's be honest. Echo cancellation, maybe? Yeah, automatic gain control. There's a lot of like variables that could be going on. And I'm taking a studio mic that is meant for vocals and miking it up to a guitar, which is already a little weird. So, I mean, we're asking a lot to begin with. We tried to play music. It's all good.
It sounded fine when I look, maybe it would have died if I tried some other chords. Maybe the E minor was just the only thing that was going to work.
Yeah, could be a lot of things, but it's all good.
Well, since our fun was ruined, I guess we'll just end it here then. Let the people know where they can find you, all your channels, all that fun stuff.
Oh, So on my website, egee.xyz, there's links to all of the stuff that I do. The main place I'm active with people that want to interact with me is Twitter. I've got the Egee YouTube channel. I've got Open Egee. I've got Egee Nuevo or Nuevo Egee, one of the two. I'm also on Mastodon, but Mastodon's more of like an OOC thing. I'm not super active there, and when I am, I'm usually just like complaining about something. And yeah, there's probably more. I'm on Twitch. I'm on SoundCloud. EGXYZ has all of that though.
I'll have whatever you want me linked down in the description. If you just want the
Right.
website, you want the individual things, I can do whatever you want.
Cool. Yeah, that would be rad.
As for me, I've got my main channel that is Brody Robertson. I do mostly daily videos, 6 days a week, something like that. I've got my gaming channel, Brody Robertson Plays, which is going to get rebranded at some point into something that is a slightly better name. Right now I'm playing through The World Ends With You and Cult of the Lamb. So go and have fun with those ones. If you are listening to the audio version of this, the video version is available on YouTube. If you're watching the video, the audio version is available as an RSS feed. Just look up Tech Over Tea. It's available on most of the podcast platforms out there. It's 2 a.m. right now. And you'll find it wherever you want to find it. Egee, do you have any words you want to end the show with?
Hello world. Hello YouTube.
It's usually how you start a show, but sure, we can end it like that. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.